1916, and ended on December 16th in 1916. This horrific battle inflicted 340,000 casualties on the German army and over 360 casualties on the French army. The new war tactics that arose in World War I and applied in the Battle of Verdun contributed greatly to the massive casualties in the battlefield. Some of these new tactics involved preparatory artillery bombardments, creeping barrages, going over the top, and poison gas attacks. Preparatory artillery bombardments were used to kill enemy frontline soldiers and weaken opposing trenches before a large group of infantry would attack. Creeping barrages, used in conjunction with preparatory artillery bombardments, were fired by howitzers into points of interest in no man's land, followed by a small group of infantry. Each time, the howitzer would fire shells forward slightly, or walk the shells closer and closer to the enemy trenches. This artillery tactic helped the French succeed at the Battle of Verdun. Going over the top, a controversial and suicidal tactic, involved waves of soldiers who were sent over the top of trenches and ran toward enemy trenches, knee-deep in mud, through no man's land. Sadly, almost all soldiers that went over the top died as a result of machine gun fire. Soldiers that refused to go over the top after given the order were shot by their own officers. Poison gas was used to clear out enemy trenches with gas that caused severe burns, internal and external blisters, blindness, breathing difficulties, and sometimes death. Erich von Falkenhayn, the German Chief of General Staff, plan was to launch an immense invasion and destroy the 20 major forts and 40 smaller forts to humiliate France and drastically lower their morale. These French forts were extremely vulnerable due to their lack of ammunition and incomplete trenches. Nearly 80,000 Germans were mobilized to take part in Falkenhayn's plan. In the early days of the battle, the light cavalry soldiers positioned at outposts in the Bois de Cahors area returned fire as best they could, led by Lieutenant Colonel Driant, although on the 22nd of February he was killed, leaving his unit decimated. In the days that followed, nearly 20,000 men were killed. The village of Brabant was evacuated on the 23rd, and Samogny and Beaumont and Ornes were lost to the following day. Over the course of the next few days, 9 villages were completely destroyed. Douaumont Fort, which was occupied by some 50 or so elderly soldiers, was unexpectedly taken on the 25th of February by a German reconnaissance patrol. All 50 of the French within the fort surrendered and the German campaign claimed victory. On the 26th of February, General Pétain, leading the French Second Army, took command of operations on the Verdun front. In early March, the village of Douaumont was taken. The Germans had advanced a few kilometers along their restricted front, but were still unable to break through French defense. On the 5th, the Kronprinz army launched a new attack, encompassing the left bank of the Meuse, but on the 8th of March, the Germans were stopped in Mortom. Trucks were deployed from Badonvillers and Bar-le-Duc along the road between Bar-le-Duc and Verdun, which enabled initial reinforcements, supplies, and fresh troops to be transported to the front. The French were now counterattacking the Germans, choosing to fight back instead of suffering. On the 9th of April, Mortom was taken, but the French put up a fierce defense, slowing the Germans' advance. For the following days, fighting continued on both of the banks of the Meuse and even as far as Les Esparges. On May of 1916, the French attempted to get nearer to Douaumont, since the loss of the fort had never been accepted by French command. On the 1st of May, General Pétain was replaced by the more aggressive General Nivelle. Under his command, General Mangin attempted to recapture Douaumont. In the beginning of June, the Germans, despite suffering significant casualties, persisted in wanting to take Verdun, and following a 7-day siege, they managed to gain control of Fort Vaux on the 7th of June. On the 23rd of June, 60,000 Germans advanced along the 6-kilometer front following toxic gas bombings on the French. The final attack was launched on the 12th of July in the Souville sector. Though this marked the furthest point of German advancement, their advances were warded off and Souville fort remained in French territory. The Germans never came within 5 kilometers of Verdun, and none of their objectives were met. On the 12th of July, the Crown Prince Wilhelm of Russia, leading the German Fifth Army, received the order to settle for defensive action. From this day forward, the Germans abandoned any hope of taking Verdun. On the 24th of October, Douaumont Fort was recaptured by the Colonial Infantry Regiment of Morocco, with the help of Senegalese and Somali skirmishes. Following this recapture, Fort Vaux was retaken on the 3rd of November, and by the 21st of December, most of the positions that had been lost during the battle had been recaptured by the French army. In the winter of 1916, France was proclaimed the official victor of the Battle of Verdun.